I stayed where I was without feeling the need to move forward, allowing the moment to open slowly as the sound settled in the room, because I had learned that nothing meaningful arrives when it is pushed to appear too quickly. As the minutes passed, I noticed how the air itself seemed to stretch, and instead of filling that space with unnecessary thoughts, I allowed each feeling to complete its own path without interruption or urgency. There was a time when I believed progress only came from constant motion, but sitting here now, I understood that remaining still could hold just as much weight when the stillness was chosen rather than forced. The light beyond the window shifted gradually, marking time without asking for recognition, and I followed that gentle change instead of measuring the hours myself. I did not attempt to name what this moment meant, because labeling it would have narrowed it, and I wanted it to remain wide enough to breathe on its own. Each sentence carried itself forward naturally, not rushing toward a conclusion, but extending long enough to feel complete before the next thought arrived. I remained present as the sound continued, allowing the tone to stay even and unbroken, trusting that meaning would reveal itself without being chased. When this passage of time finally moves on, it will do so quietly and without resistance, leaving behind nothing unfinished, because every part of it was allowed to exist fully. I stayed awake longer than I planned, sitting in the same place while the night slowly stretched across the room. Not because I was waiting for something to happen, but because moving felt unnecessary once everything became quiet. The light from the street softened as the hours passed, and I let my breathing settle into a pace that did not rush the moment. I thought about how nights like this used to feel shorter, as if time moved faster when there was someone beside me. And I noticed how different it felt now, with the same walls, the same window, and a silence that stayed honest. Nothing asked for my attention, and I did not ask anything from the night in return. I remained where I was, letting thoughts come and leave without following them too far, allowing each one to finish before the next arrived. So nothing collided or rushed ahead. This was not a moment that needed fixing, and it was not a moment that needed explaining. As the night deepened, I remembered how easily we used to talk until morning, believing that sleep could always wait, and that there would always be time to recover later. That belief faded without making noise, and I understood it only after it was gone. Now I let the night take its full shape, without naming what it means or where it leads, because labeling it would only shorten it. And I wanted this moment to stay complete. I did not fill the quiet with plans, and I did not distract myself from the stillness. The room held its position as darkness settled more fully, and I stayed in the same posture, understanding that staying present was different from being unable to move forward. The difference felt clear, and I respected it. This song does not build toward a sudden change, and it does not promise that morning will arrive with answers. It remains with the night as it is, allowing each second to finish before the next begins. I am not holding on to the past, and I am not pushing it away. I am simply letting it exist in the background, where it no longer needs my attention to stay real. The distance between then and now feels steady, and I keep it that way. There is no need to lift the emotion or pull it higher, because this night does not ask for intensity. It asks only to be lived through slowly, with the same tone carried from beginning to end. As time continues to move forward, I am still here, not because I am waiting, but because leaving early would break the moment. I let the hours pass at their own pace, trusting that nothing important will be missed by staying. The night completes itself without instruction, and I allow it to reach its end without interruption. Everything that needed to be felt is already settled, and there is no urgency left in the sound. When the last traces of night begin to fade, I will still be here, unchanged by the passing hours, having allowed this moment to remain whole, from its first breath to its last. Tonight I stayed in the room after the lights outside began to fade, listening to the quiet settle without trying to interrupt it. Nothing needed to be fixed before the night arrived, and I let the hours come as they were. The window reflected parts of the room back to me, and I did not turn away from what I saw. I stayed seated, breathing at a steady pace, allowing the evening to finish its work. There were messages I did not open and thoughts I did not chase, because answering everything tonight did not feel necessary. I remembered how nights used to end too quickly, when we believed there would always be another one. That belief changed without asking, and I noticed it only after time had passed. So I let this night move slowly, without naming what it meant. I did not argue with the silence, and I did not fill it with noise. The room held its shape as darkness settled in, and I stayed where I was, understanding that staying was not the same as stopping. This song does not explain the past, and it does not predict tomorrow. It stays with this moment exactly as it is. I am not trying to make tonight special, and I am not trying to forget it. I let it remain ordinary, trusting that ordinary is enough. There is no reason to lift the emotion here, only to keep it steady. The distance between then and now remains clear, and I respect it as the hours continue. I am still here, not waiting for something to happen, but allowing the night to complete itself, not moving tonight does not mean I am standing still forever. It only means this moment deserves to be whole. So I stay with the same tone until the end, letting the sound finish without urgency. Everything that needed to be felt has already arrived. When the sound finally fades, the room will remain as it is, and I will still be here tonight without needing anything else. I stayed where I was longer than usual, allowing the moment to open slowly around me, because I'd already learned that pushing time forward never brings understanding any closer. As the room remained quiet, I let my thoughts unfold without interruption, giving each feeling enough space to finish itself before another one arrived. There was a time when I believed progress only came from moving quickly, but sitting here now, I realize that stillness chosen on purpose could carry just as much meaning. The light outside shifted almost without notice, and instead of measuring the hours, I followed that gentle change as it continued at its own pace. I did not try to define what this moment was supposed to be, because naming it too quickly would have reduced its shape before it fully formed. Each sentence carried itself forward naturally, extending long enough to feel complete. And I resisted the urge to move ahead, simply to reach an ending. Time continued without asking anything from me, and for once I did not argue with its speed or attempt to guide it somewhere else. I remembered how often I had rushed through moments like this before, believing that clarity waited at the finish, only discover later that I had missed everything along the way. So I stayed, allowing the sound to settle fully into the room, trusting that nothing important would disappear just because I was was not chasing it. The air itself seemed to stretch as the minutes passed, and I allowed my breathing to follow that same unhurried pattern. This moment did not need excitement to justify itself, and it did not require explanation to be considered complete. Instead of moving from thought to thought too quickly, I let each one dissolve naturally before the next appeared. I was not trying to arrive anywhere specific, and I was not afraid of how long this process might take. Understanding did not come all at once, but slowly, as the pressure to hurry finally disappeared. As the sound continued, I remained within it, allowing the tone to stay even and unbroken from beginning to end. When this passage of time finally moves on, it will do so quietly, leaving nothing unfinished behind, because every part of it was allowed to exist fully. After you left, I stayed in the same room and did not change a thing, because moving the furniture would not change what was missing. The door closed behind you without noise, and the silence that followed felt honest. I sat where we used to talk without planning the next sentence, letting the evening arrive the way it wanted to. There was no need to explain anything to myself, because I already knew why the room felt larger. The clock kept moving without checking on me, and the light outside slowly disappeared from the window. I did not try to distract myself from the quiet, and I did not rush to fill it with thoughts. I remembered how we used to stay a little longer than planned, thinking there would always be more time tomorrow. That belief left before you did, and I noticed it only after the door was closed. So now I let the hours pass without naming them, and I do not argue with the pace they choose. Nothing here needs to be fixed tonight, and nothing needs to be decided. in the room changed as night settled in, but I remained where I was, accepting that staying still was not the same as being lost. And this song does not ask you to come back, and it does not explain why you left. It only tells the truth about this moment. After everything became quiet, I am not trying to hold on to what we had, and I'm not trying to forget it either. I let the memory exist without forcing it, trusting that it will find its own place. There is no sudden rise in emotion here, only a steady awareness of what remains. The distance between then and now stays clear, and I do not cross it. As more time passes, I am still here, not because I am waiting, but because leaving does not feel necessary. The night continues without interruption, not moving forward tonight does not mean I am standing still forever. It only means this moment deserves to be complete before the next one begins. So I stay with the same tone until the end, allowing the song to finish without urgency. Everything that needed to be said has already been spoken. When the sound finally fades, the room will remain exactly as it is, and I will still be here after you, without needing anything else. This morning I sat inside my room with the window half open, feeling the air that had not yet cooled from the night before. I knew another ordinary day was beginning again, and I told myself there was no reason to hurry. The coffee on the table was still untouched, steam rising slowly without asking for attention. I tried to stay empty of thoughts until that steam disappeared. allowing this moment to exist without a decision. Outside I could hear people already moving into their day, but those sounds did not pull me forward. They stayed in the distance like a background, while I remained where I was, breathing quietly. Maybe I have always been someone who pauses at the edge of a new day like this. If I move forward without checking where I stand, my mind begins to shake before my feet do. So today, once again, I chose not to decide whether this day would be good or bad. I let it move at its own pace, putting down the thought that everything must be done well. Light entered through the window and moved slowly along the wall. I followed it with my eyes without measuring the time it took. This was not a day meant to be shown to anyone, and this moment did not need to prove anything. It was simply happening, and that was enough. This song does not begin with a strong decision. It is not trying to say something impressive. It only speaks about a day like today, moving forward exactly as it is. I am not trying to preserve this moment beautifully. I allow it to remain ordinary, trusting that it already holds its own meaning. There is no need to push emotion higher in the middle. This song will continue with the same speed, the same temperature, and the same distance. As more time passed, I was still sitting in the same place. I took a sip of the now cooler coffee and thought that this state was not a bad one. Not achieving something today does not mean the day is wasted. Moving slowly does not mean I have taken the wrong path. I already knew these things, and I allowed them to settle quietly. So this song does not tell anyone to move forward, and it does not offer comfort. It simply leaves behind the fact that someone was sitting here like this at this moment. As the ending approaches without noise, I do not rush to close it. I stay with the same tone and the same feeling, confirming that I have come this far. When the song finally ends, I will probably stand up, and the day will begin to move again. But this moment. I wanna leave right here, quietly.
Holds a steady light that does not ask for speed. Soft air settles slowly along familiar walls. Nothing pulls me forward or pushes me away. The moment stays wide and calm enough to breathe. Thoughts arrive gently and wait without pressure. No sharp sound breaks the quiet center. A simple stillness fills this space. It stays long enough to feel true. The piano opens space between each careful note. Every sound appears, then rests before leaving. The voice follows in long and even lines. Nothing rushes, nothing interrupts the flow. A memory moves closer, then pauses at a safe distance. It does not demand meaning or explanation. The center remains warm and balanced. The song continues without effort. Time feels slower when nothing fights against it. Small worries loosen and fade away. The melody keeps a patient shape. No pattern insists on control. A gentle lift appears inside the phrase, then settles back without force. The tone remains clear and grounded. The breath stays long and even. The light shifts quietly across the floor. The calm does not change its direction. Each phrase moves forward patiently. No word is shortened or clipped. The piano keeps the ground steady beneath the voice. The singing stays smooth and unbroken. Each line carries enough air to rest. Nothing turns sharp or quick. Another thought drifts in and then drifts out. It leaves no mark upon the steady balance. The melody holds its quiet path. The calm remains untouched. There is no reason to rise higher now. What is here already feels complete. The song stays on its gentle line. The heart stays present and still. Shadows stretch slowly along the walls. without drama. The piano remains open and warm. The voice continues calmly. Evening arrives without announcement. The day releases its final weight. I keep the line of singing steady. I let the quiet remain. Nothing breaks the flow, nothing suddenly changes shape. Each moment rests inside the next. The song keeps moving forward. As the ending draws near, nothing drops away. The voice remains until the final breath. A soft closure settles into silence.